G'day folks, my name's Mike Langran. I'm a GP in Abbeymoor and I work with the Ski Patrol here as a doctor on the slopes at Cairngorm. And I'm also president of the International Society for Skiing Safety, which is the worldwide organisation which promotes safety in snow sports. And basically we as Ski Patrol, we don't like to see you injured, we like to see you out on the slopes enjoying yourself, and although the absolute risk of an injury is fairly small, we want to encourage you to do everything you possibly can to avoid ending up in here, our Ski Patrol room. So I just wanted to run through really our top 10 tips for staying safe on the slopes. And number one rule really is to follow the FIS Code of Conduct on the slopes. You'll find this advertised at all the ski areas, and it's basically a little bit like the highway code on the ski slopes. And if you follow the rules in general, you should help to keep yourself and everyone around you safe. Always remember when you're out on the slopes, particularly as beginners, that it takes time to build up experience on the mountain. Don't try and do too much too soon. Don't try and cram lessons into a short space of time and then think that you can head down a black run safely, because you can't. So take your time on the slopes, enjoy it and build up your experience over time. Really important that you make sure that your equipment is appropriate for you. So if you're hiring equipment, make sure you go to a reputable hire shop. They should take time to ask you about your ability level, check that the equipment's right for you, that it's sized correctly for you, and really importantly for skiers, make sure that your bindings are set correctly. If you own your own skis, make sure your bindings are serviced at least once at the start of the season. And if you're skiing regularly, think about getting them checked about every 14 days or so, because bindings have got lots of little mechanical bits in them and it's amazing how quickly they can rust. So although you've got your binding set at maybe 7 or 8, you don't know for sure that the binding will release at that level unless you've had the bindings checked and serviced. So the self-test for alpine ski bindings is something all alpine skiers should think about doing before they head up on the slopes. Ideally daily, but if not, at least sort of 2 or 3 times a week, and it just checks that your bindings will still release depending on your legs at that particular time. So there's 2 aspects to it. We test the toe piece of the binding and we test the heel piece of the binding. And with both, you should be able to release the binding yourself, and if you can't, chances are your binding is set too high for you at that point in time. And this has been looked at scientifically, and those people who do a daily self-test on their bindings reduce the risk of knee injuries by about 1/3. So for the toe piece, basically what you do is you set your ski on its edge and you try and twist your toe out of the binding. If your binding is set correctly, you should be able to do this without too much force. For the heel piece of the binding, and this is the one that often gives the problem, you set your ski straight, you push your leg back, and you gently, and I emphasize gently, try and raise your heel out of the binding. Do this carefully, because if you apply too much force you could damage your Achilles tendon or your calf muscle. But again, if your binding is set correctly, you should be able to release the heel piece rather, as you lift your heel up. With either the toe or the heel piece, if you find that you can't release them, then just dial the binding down by 0.5 until you can, repeating the test every time. Once you've got to a setting where you can release the binding, you should leave your binding at that setting for the rest of the day. At the end of the day, dial your binding back to its original setting, ready to do the self-test the next time. Recognise when you need a rest. Skiing and snowboarding are pretty sort of physical activities, and a lot of people underestimate how much stress it can put on your muscles. So if you're feeling tired, have a stop, get yourself a hot chockey, have something to eat and drink, and then head back out on the slopes, because we see lots of people who get injured towards the end of the day when they're tired and their legs and the muscles really don't have the strength to carry on. Think about protective equipment. We highly recommend that everyone on the slopes wears a helmet. There's very good evidence now that wearing a helmet will protect you against the vast majority of head injuries that we see on the slopes, so T-bars hitting you on the head or an impact into the snow. If you're buying a helmet, make sure that it fits you properly, and look inside and make sure it meets one of the recommended standards for snow sports, which is EN 1077, ASTM 2040 or SNEL 98. Most helmets will do that, but make sure that yours does. If you're snowboarding, think about some wrist guards. It's the #1 injury for snowboarding. About 25% of all the snowboarders we treat here will have injured wrists. And unfortunately, some of these injuries are fairly significant and will mean operations and significant time off the slopes. So for about £30–35, you can buy a set of wrist guards. The ones we recommend are Flex Meter and Biomex. And you can buy those locally here in Abbeymoor and on the slopes in the shops here on Cairngorm. But basically any guard is better than no guard, so think about buying yourself a wrist guard. Think about your clothing. Ideally, layer yourself so that you can take things off and on depending on the weather, prevailing weather. But in general, it's easier to get cooler than warmer. So good base layer, good middle layer, and obviously a good top protective layer, because you can be often caught out by the changing conditions from the bottom of the mountain till you come up here to the top of the mountain, where the wind will have picked up and the wind chill will be significant. If you're going to go off-piste into the backcountry, you really need to be properly equipped for this. You need to have looked at the avalanche risk, and you need to have correct equipment, which should at least be a transceiver, probe and shovel. And if you're not sure about where you're going or not sure about what you're doing, think about getting some professional instruction or a professional guide. Not so much of an issue here on the slopes on Cairngorm, but in general, if you're skiing on the continent, watch out for trees. Trees are the things that tend to cause problems for people if they collide with a tree or if they fall into the pit underneath a tree, the so-called tree well. So steer clear of trees and just be careful if you're skiing around trees, because they are associated with a lot of accidents. And finally, do remember that ski patrol are not killjoys. If my colleagues decide to close a slope, it's usually for good reason, even if that reason is not immediately apparent to you. So don't duck the ropes, don't ski around if it says piste closed, and obey the signs. If it says experts only and you're still at the snowplow stage, don't try and go down the slopes on that particular day. So just top 10 rules really. Follow these and hopefully you'll keep yourself safe on the slopes, and we'll have no need to see you in here in the ski patrol room.